So good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Wayne Cutter of the GSMA. On behalf of the GSMA, I'd like to welcome you to today's seminar run by the GSMA's Tower Fibre Forum. So the forum was formed in late-ish 2021 in reaction to, or as a consequence of, the emergence of a new grouping of play in the mobile ecosystem, namely the Tower FibreCos, following the MNOs selling off their tower assets. This forum provides a platform for all the companies with interest in this space to come together, discuss topics of mutual interest. So TowerCos, obviously, MNOs, infrastructure providers, investors, anything else you care to mention. Today's the Tower Fibre Forum holds 3 or 4 online events per annum, 2 face-to-face events in Mobile World Congress and in the Mobile World Congress Las Vegas in September. Today's event is our 9th or 10th, something like that, following our first event in, I think it was late November 21. Any topic of relevance can be brought up, so we've covered anything from 5G impact on cell towers, on towers, to cell evolution, to new cell rollout, digital twinning, investment opportunities, HAPS, energy, sustainability, and probably a bunch of other stuff that I can't remember. So it's anything that's of relevance can be brought to the forum. Today we have 6 excellent speakers, so thanks to all our speakers for giving up of their time to be with us and share their expertise. And I would now like to hand over to Mr. Lee Sanders of Aetha Consulting, who will introduce the session, will introduce the speakers, and will act as the moderator for today's seminar. Thank you, Lee.
Morning. Thank you, Wayne, for that, and thank you also to the GSMA for putting on this event, and also, for a fantastic MWC. I've enjoyed every moment of it so far, and welcome and well done to all of you guys for making it this far and being here on Thursday morning. I think we'll have an excellent session for you. My name is Lee Sanders. I'm a partner, the managing partner at Aetha Consulting. The focus of today's session is going to be about TowerCo diversification. What should TowerCos be doing to diversify away from their traditional revenue stream? And those traditional revenue streams are obviously leasing space on towers to mobile operators. However, before we get on to that, and we've got an excellent kind of group of speakers to talk through that issue, I'd like to set the scene a little bit, step back, talk a little bit about the traditional revenue stream of TowerCos and what the opportunities and threats are in that. Before I do that, just a quick mention about Aetha for those that haven't heard about us. We're a boutique consultancy focused in the TMT sector. We offer a range of services. Many of you might know us most for some of the work we do in the spectrum area, but we do a lot of work in the towers area. So, for example, we do due diligence for those that are buying or selling towers assets. We look at the business case or help towers consolidate their networks to create synergies. New business opportunities, we'll talk about all sorts of business opportunities for TowerCos today. We help on that front and do business cases for them. And we also look at RAN as a service and help TowerCos either look at the neutral host model or perhaps move up into the RAN layer. But moving on. The TowerCo business model, it's actually a remarkably straightforward business model. The TowerCos sell space on towers to the MNOs. That's their traditional business. And it's driven by 2 things. First of all, it's driven by the number of sites that the mobile operators demand, the number of new locations I have here. And then secondly, the tenancy ratio. How many mobile operators are on each site? Each mobile operator pays rent for those sites. The more mobile operators, the more services per site, the greater the revenue. You put those 2 things together, and they dictate the traditional revenue stream of a TowerCo. But what drives that? And that's what I'd like to talk about today. And there are many things that drive the traditional revenue stream of a TowerCo. And these are just 4 of them. You have the data usage growth, which ultimately drives the load on a mobile operator's network, and therefore the number of sites that it requires. Spectrum, which the mobile operators view as a substitute to sites. Coverage obligations, which are increasingly common and drive site demand notably in rural areas. And a recent trend is network consolidation, which actually is a threat to the TowerCos, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. So today, I'd like to briefly talk through the four of these, and then I'll hand over to our panelists who will talk through the new opportunities, the different things that some of the TowerCos can do. So the first one of those is mobile data usage growth, and that has been falling. If you go back to the 2015 to 2020 period, there was a huge increase in data growth, in data usage, potentially in the order of 50% per year. And indeed, some of our clients were seeing 80 to 100% growth in traffic in individual years. That was driven by new services. It was driven by the mass uptake of 4G devices and the mass uptake of smartphones. Those two things came together, and customers effectively finally had, in some ways, a decent device and decent connectivity. And unsurprisingly, that led to traffic growth. And that drove a lot of demand on the MNO's network, which drove the requirement for sites. That has fallen a little bit. And as you can see here, it's approximately at 30%, beneath 30% a year now. And Ericsson are forecasting it to fall yet further. It will always grow, but perhaps at a lower rate. So a key question is to the MNOs, and then therefore to the TowerCos by an extension, what might drive future traffic growth? 5G doesn't really seem to be driving that much. 6G might be different. Then there are other services, other technologies. The big one out there, obviously, is IoT. If we're in a world where there are billions of IoT devices, each generating their own traffic, then we may see traffic growth like we saw in the 2015 to 2020 period. Spectrum. As mentioned, the mobile operators view spectrum as a substitute to sites. The reason that the mobile operators have spent so much money on spectrum over the years is in order to avoid building sites. The additional spectrum means they get additional capacity on sites, which means they don't need to deploy new ones. From a TowerCos perspective, that's obviously a dampening effect. But then, secondly, with each new band that comes around, there can be new equipment being deployed on sites, which is an opportunity for the TowerCos. If we go back to the 2010 period, 10 years ago or thereabouts, there was clearly a bottleneck in spectrum. There was insufficient in the market, and that's why auction prices were so high. However, that has largely been reversed or eased. The award and the deployment of C-band around the world kind of dropped an enormous or a huge amount of capacity on the networks. Once combined with massive MIMO antennas, you can see C-band carrying 50% plus of a mobile operator's capacity on a network. So the spectrum constraints have certainly eased in recent years, but not necessarily in low frequencies. The amount of capacity that's come online in the low frequencies has been smaller in proportion. And that may mean that there are constraints perhaps in rural areas, perhaps deep indoors in terms of capacity. Looking forward, WRC23 had a big win for the mobile industry. The identification of the upper 6 gigahertz for IMT will provide a lot more capacity in the future. For the next WRC27, 3 bands have agenda items to be potentially identified for IMT. They're not necessarily all that promising. The 4.5 gigahertz band isn't necessarily available everywhere. Certainly in Europe, it's difficult. 15 gigahertz, we might be touching too high frequencies there to be of much use. The 7 to 8 gigahertz band is certainly the most promising. One notable thing is that there's no low band being looked at in the next cycle. No sub 1 gigahertz frequencies. The next time that sub 1 gigahertz will be on the agenda will be at WRC31. So we may be looking, I think we're looking 10 years, a good decade away before we see more low band come on the market. Policy has been driving site demand. The one issue that regulators across the world are facing at the moment is that 2G and 3G spectrum licenses are approaching expiry. And there's a question about what do you do at that stage? And the solution to that are many and varied. Some regulators are auctioning it again, whilst others have gone down a very different route to re-award or renew the licenses at low or indeed zero cost in exchange for coverage commitments. Spain, France are two very good examples of this. And indeed, the New Deal in France in 2018, where the operators renewed all of their licenses for various commitments, some of which included rural coverage, that's driven 2,600 additional sites in rural areas in France. That's going to be good news for the TowerCos. And the final thing I want to talk about is consolidation of networks. This happens in two mechanisms. The first one is mergers. Second one is network sharing. So if we can, but the rationale for both, or one of the rationales for both, is similar. It's to create synergies, cost savings by eliminating duplicate sites. And if we consider mergers first of all, American Tower and Crown Castle are being forecast to lose over $600 million over the next 5 years due to the merger of Sprint and T-Mobile. That's material. So this is clearly a dampening effect on the TowerCo's business. And there are various other mergers, MNO mergers, being touted across the world, and I name a few there. Network sharing is similar in many ways. The rationale for it is to eliminate duplicate sites and create cost savings. And what you see on the right is the outputs of a piece of work that we did recently to assess the business case for network sharing between two mobile operators. It's been anonymized, of course, but you can see the results there. We're talking in the order of 30% site reduction is possible from network sharing. So, in conclusion, there are the TowerCo traditional revenue streams are robust. They're relatively risk-free compared to many other investments. That's why the infrastructure funds really love the TowerCos and why they're investing in them. But like anything else, there are threats, there are opportunities. And the best TowerCos of tomorrow will be not only optimizing this business, they'll be looking to other new businesses. They'll be looking to new opportunities to create new revenue streams to make most of the assets that they own. And that's what we want to talk about today. And that's why I have the excellent panel with me to go through that. So just to introduce them, one by one, we have Matt Edwards from TowerXchange, Daniel Campion, the CEO of Sitenna, who've developed an innovative infrastructure asset management system, Mirko Masi from Cellnex, Jaime Abril from Vantage Towers, and Raadjkoemar Matai from YOFC, who will cover the fibre side of things. Of course, every tower needs a fibre connecting to it. So the plan is I'll invite each one of these guys to come up and say a few words, and after that we'll come up and have a discussion. And I'd love it if the audience got involved. Think of some questions. We'll make this as interactive as we can do. Okay. Well, first of all, in which case I'd like to invite Matt up to talk through talk first. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for having me here. Really delighted to be here. I apologise, my throat's a little hoarse, my feet are a little sore. So I've been walking around talking to a lot of people, but it's been really, really great to be here. So really good scene setting, so thank you very much for kicking things off there. As I said, my name's Matt Edwards from TowerXchange, product director there. Over the next 10-15 minutes, I'm just going to take us through some examples of diversifications, real-life diversification examples that TowerCos are looking at, and how we're doing that. Just a note to the back desk, I don't have a timer, and I really don't want to overrun, because there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. So, why am I here? I don't own any towers. I've never even climbed a tower, although I would if anyone's got one. TowerXchange are a community host. We talk to the industry constantly. We meet up regularly. And we produce regular reports on different areas. So last year, we produced a report called Tomorrow's TowerCo, looking at some of these options. But we also produce regular information on who owns what, transactions, and interviews with senior execs. We arrange meetups. We do 5 all around the world. Would love to see you at one, but I'll skip over that quickly. We currently track 324 TowerCos. Those TowerCos own 3.87 million towers. There's 5.33 million sort of investable towers and rooftops all around the world. So that's the kind of the large-scale database that we maintain, that we draw information from. To continue with a bit of scene setting, I just want to talk about who owns those towers. And increasingly, the answer is not mobile operators. So if you look on the charts here, this is from the end of 2022, end of 2023, and this is sort of the end, so around now, basically. And what we are seeing is a continued progression away from mobile operators owning towers. 2 years ago, it was still 28.6% mobile operator owned. Today, 21.7%. So even from quite a significant share owned by TowerCos, that share owned by mobile operators is still shrinking. And if increasingly you don't own your towers, the mindset of the mobile operators is there to say, well, what other things can we outsource? What other things can we work with TowerCos on? For this report and a lot of the examples here, it's drawn from Tomorrow's TowerCo. This is a smaller sample of about 47 TowerCos. There's a couple of charts at the end that we draw some data on what's actually happening from. So it's a reasonable sized sample. Now, as I said, I wanted to make sure I don't overrun. I've got quite a few different areas to look at. There are a lot of options on what we can look at. There's edge computing, there's EV charging, there's hosting services, there's all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to look at all of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about energy, a little bit about smart towers, in-building connectivity, satellite, non-terrestrial connectivity, network as a service. I'll touch on private networks and edge, and I'm going to talk about fibre as well. If I get through all of that, I'll be very, very happy. So first up, the kind of original diversification for TowerCos is around energy. TowerCos like Helios Towers in Africa, it's very much a hygiene factor for their operations in Africa. It's not so much a diversification, it's just if you want a tower to be operational in Africa, you need to have fantastic operational experience delivering power to those sites. Where it gets it gets much more complicated. To be fair, what Helios do is quite complicated. Where it gets more different is the European example in developed markets where you have a good grid, you're not just providing primary power, you have backup assets, you have batteries on sites, and you're really there to make sure the network never goes down. What Aetha have done in Finland, and they're offering their services around to others, is build a virtual power plant, so 150 megawatts hour power plant distributed across their network in Finland. They have a contract with the grid to provide grid balancing services. Finland's very demanding. It's cold. The grid can be unstable. There's increased distributed generation going into there, and Aetha will help balance that for you. So it's, in a sense, similar to what TowerCos do. It's finding an asset and making it do more than it does do currently. So instead of a tower having one tenant, it's got two. Instead of your battery just sitting there doing nothing, apart from the rare occasion the grid goes down, it is discharging and charging from the grid, constantly providing a service. Smart towers, a few really interesting examples I'll go through quickly. You've got a tower, they're in fantastic locations, most of them. If you've got an urban tower, it's probably near stuff that you care about, whether it's economic activity broadly or people. So China Tower, huge tower network. They provide security services, CCTV, they're monitoring fishing prohibition on the Yangtze River, forest fire prevention through sensors on the towers. American Tower in Paris had a whole host of services they were providing in Paris as part of their Paris to Connect initiative. And that was a real substantial sort of proof of concept for them. And Indus Towers, again, similar security services, lighting, but also EV charging. You have a network that is connected, that you're good at managing a distributed network. That's a certain skill set that can be applied elsewhere. So real life examples of using towers to do more. In-building solutions and sort of in-building connectivity, really important. How is everyone's mobile connectivity in this room right now or in this event over the last few days? How's the Wi-Fi? It's been okay, but it hasn't been perfect. And I think one of the interesting things about in-building solutions is it's quite an old sort of source of diversification for TowerCos. Often they've acquired portfolios of towers that have come with DAS systems in stadiums or elsewhere, and yet there's still some commercial difficulties about getting in-building working everywhere it should be to the standards that people expect, because you'll have building owners, mobile operators, TowerCos, consumers, and a lot of different discussions over who pays. When you visit a large building, you don't necessarily think, am I going to have coverage in there or not as a data consumer? But the building owner gets a lot of value from it, and the mobile operator wants you using data while you're in there. So there's still questions around how that business model can continue growing and being as large as macros, but the demand, the interest is there. Satellite and other non-terrestrial network connectivity. So this is a slightly strange one. So around the world, about 60 to 70,000 towers have satellite backhaul of some form. A lot of that's around delivering rural coverage where you don't have line of sight to another tower. But in a lot of areas, it is really essential to maintain that connectivity by using satellite. Now, traditionally, that's a service the satellite operator has provided to the mobile networks. But in Africa, Avanti now, they find their main customers are, in fact, TowerCos. And there is an option there to be providing more backhaul services by collaborating or working with satellite companies. There's also a diversification play here as well, or some risk hedging. So Cellnex acquired a stake in Sateliot, which is the first satellite operator to offer IoT connectivity over standard 5G narrowband. That is very different to what Cellnex normally do, but it's within the same universe, and it's helping sort of future-proof them. Similarly, American Tower has invested in AST Space Mobile, one of a couple of companies that do this, but they'll use GSM spectrum to connect to your phone. There'll be a satellite passing overhead, and it will ping your phone. It will use spectrum that your phone is used to. You don't need a fancy satellite phone, which theoretically, if enough capacity ends up in satellites, do you still need a macro tower network at all? Yes, I think you do, but there's lots of other ways to provide connectivity, and TowerCos are looking at ways to play within that space. And Protolindo there, they invested in a HAPS system, so a high-altitude airship, essentially a dirigible, up in the air with a sort of antenna system on the bottom that you can connect to. So not a tower, but it's an antenna very high up in the air, so it has a lot of similar characteristics. Network as a service. So this is something we're speaking about. On the Cellnex example in Polkomtel, I'll probably leave it so you can hear it from the horse's mouth later. But I'll share the example of Africa Mobile Networks within Africa. Up to about 5,000 sites live now. These are a bit positive sites. They are in the smallest villages you can imagine, maybe 3,000 people, ARPUs, $1 if you're lucky, but providing the network for the mobile operator. They are going out into rural Africa. I think they're active in about 12 countries there now. They will build a simple monopole. They will have solar panels on there, a battery, an extremely low-powered base station and radio, backhaul, and they will be providing a service to that mobile operator, and they will only be getting paid as a revenue share. So all the CapEx is coming from that TowerCo, but they're providing that network, and they're dialing into the operator's core network. So it's live, it's happening, it is working. These are shareable sites on the active network. They're predominantly building for Orange and MTN, but there's a few other people playing in this as well. And there's other operators within Africa as well. All of the big TowerCos are experimenting and playing in this space. It is a real thing that is working there, a very specific rural application, but one that is working. On the private network side, recently Boldin, the Northern Hemisphere brand of BAI, acquired Edscom from Cellnex. That's their private network brand. Private networks are a big opportunity in terms of industrial applications for 5G. I think it's really interesting that Cellnex disposed of that to focus on what they do best, and another different TowerCo picked that up. And I think one of the messages I think the panel will come to later is around prioritization and deciding what you're doing. You're not diversifying for the sake of it. You are looking at different options because they suit you or suit your customers, and you have to find the right balance there. Freshwave, similarly, a digital bridge company, done some amazing work on sort of railway private networks within the UK, but not every digital bridge company does that. Freshwave do, and they do it well, but that doesn't mean that every digital bridge company is going to be doing it. Again, it's where are you putting your capital and what are you applying it to? On edge data centers, this is somewhere where there is a level of demand that possibly isn't there yet to really see the full potential of this opportunity for TowerCos. Fundamentally, TowerCos are good at managing distributed networks of sites, and that's what an edge data center is going to be. So SBA in this space as an American Tower through core sites. And finally, I want to talk about fiber. Again, I said going to where your customers are when you're deciding where you're going to diversify. Protelindo have a really sort of quite large 100,000 kilometers of fiber in Indonesia, and they got into that business because their customers wanted a really solid partner to lay fiber, their operators. So for Protelindo, they've got a great partnership between the customers on their towers and the customers they're providing fiber to. A similar story for IHS, where they have entered Brazil through partial acquisition of TIM's fiber network, and that gave them a footprint there, and that worked alongside that business. Crown Castle, I've got 2 minutes to wrap up, so I'm going to see how we get. Crown Castle have been a really interesting play into diversification, and something of a warning, I guess, to those that maybe potentially overpay for assets, do too many things at once, and don't have the backing of their investors. So what's happened with Crown Castle recently is they've had Elliott Management come in and say, we want you to do things differently. And this week, Tim Miller, the founder, has come in and said, no, do things slightly differently again. But the message is diversify less, focus on the macro towers, and focus on what's really valuable. Now, in the final minutes, so there's a lot of different examples, and what I want you to take from that is, it is real, there's loads of interesting and profitable and valuable diversifications that are happening. It is real, and the different TowerCos are prioritizing different things. However, what you can see is there's certain areas that the TowerCos are much more likely to focus on. So on the left here is this survey of 47 TowerCos, what services they're actually offering, and on the right here is where revenue is coming from today. So you can see everyone does macro towers. Loads of people do in-building solutions to some degree or another. A lot of the emerging market and some of the developing markets do power. Smart poles are around, some people have got some various different smarter tower solutions. But as you get through to fiber, private networks, edge, as the complexity increases and you get closer and closer to what an operator or a hyperscaler does, it tails off. So you can see some operators are getting a reasonable amount of revenue from non-traditional sources. That's Protelindo getting a lot of fiber revenue. Almost everyone is actually getting their revenue still today from macro towers. I think that's likely to continue. Right, time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Just one point. I saw people wanting a few questions there. If we can hold those to the end for the debate, that would be great. There'll be plenty of opportunities to put questions out there. Okay, thank you. So next up, we have Daniel Campion, CEO of Sitenna, who will talk to us a little bit about the migration that TowerCos are making to a more customer-centric ways of working. Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Good morning, everybody. Distinguished guests, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Lee and Matthew for setting the scene. and I'm looking forward to hearing from our panel panelists about their experiences. I'd like to talk to you today about the opportunities for infrastructure providers as they shift from being seen as a cost center to becoming customer-centric organizations. It's a shift that is not only needed, but it can unlock billions of dollars across the ecosystem. So imagine a world where drones deliver packages to your front door, where electric cars drive you while you relax in silence, where billion-dollar companies only have a handful of employees, and where factories operate so efficiently they produce products cheaper, faster, and better. This world isn't a distant future. It's on our doorstep. But there's a very big catch. That infrastructure relies on a backbone of robust digital infrastructure that is yet to be realized. To put it into perspective, The Economist recently highlighted that the world needs to invest $3.7 trillion in infrastructure in order to keep up with the technological development. Sorry, my notepad is, there we go. From telecom towers to EV charging stations, data center compute power to the grid and green energy, the scale of development required is staggering. However, building this infrastructure is really hard. It's slow, it's manual, and it's often hampered by outdated systems. And that's where Sitenna comes in. Our mission is simple yet ambitious. We partner with the best infrastructure providers to accelerate the deployment of critical infrastructure, ensuring the technology of tomorrow is unlocked today. But as we embark on this mission, we face a changing landscape. Infrastructure providers, or the customer base of infrastructure providers, is evolving. New customers like private networks, utilities, drones, and IoT need access to infrastructure for their own networks. We're seeing more and more critical infrastructure move onto their own networks rather than relying on mobile operators. After AT&T last week, you can see why. We're seeing the same in utilities and large industrials. For example, our partners are leveraging Sitenna to rapidly deploy a private network for an oil major in the US who don't want anything to do with carrier networks. And mobile operators are expecting better, more efficient delivery of the infrastructure they so desperately require. The challenge is that infrastructure providers haven't really evolved. Haven't really evolved to this change. The build and they will come mentality no longer holds true for these customers. For new customers, they are shocked and frustrated when they discover that every interaction still relies on antiquated methods like spreadsheets, emails, and PDFs. For traditional customers, younger planners are wanting more digital tools to build their networks, and mobile operators are demanding faster, more cost-effective network deployment from their providers. Why is it in this stage, excluding planning, that it still takes years to get a new site built? Why does it take many months to get a new customer on air on an existing site? Dave Mayo, previously of Dish, has a famous saying, "Why is it that I have to pay you to tell me what's on your sites?" Why indeed? The process and ways of working with customers has yet to evolve. And yet, with this challenge lies significant opportunity. By adapting to a new world, infrastructure providers can deploy more network quicker and win better margins. And by improving their interactions with customers, greatly increase the share of CapEx budgets and delivering what the existing customers need. By becoming customer-centric, infrastructure providers can also attract new customers and new revenue streams, whether it be edge data centers, RAN, fiber, power products that Matthew was mentioning earlier. Not only can they unlock new revenue, they can unlock operational excellence, improving their margins. For infrastructure providers, optimizing your existing assets translates directly to the bottom line. One additional co-location lease of $1,500 a month translates to $300,000 to $400,000 in enterprise value, and I don't know a single investor in the world who won't like that equation. So how do we get there? We believe it's through three things. One is culture, two is tools and systems, and three is products and services. The journey to becoming customer-centric starts with a paradigm shift. Most infrastructure providers are only focused on delivery of network and their costs. But by pivoting culturally to view themselves as a customer-centric organization, they can greatly improve their interaction with their customers. They can unlock higher revenue, and they can deliver operational excellence. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on culture. I'll leave McKinsey do their thing in their slide packs and tell you all about how wonderful culture can be. And you've already heard about the infrastructure providers can leverage their position to offer new products, and we're going to hear more about that in following speeches. But I wanted to quickly dive into tools and systems. So current systems and processes are focused inward, creating secure environments in which to operate within their organization. Paradoxically, as soon as the interaction happens between stakeholders, it often ends up being sent through email, spreadsheets, and PDFs. Not only does this lead to cyber risk, it means the data shared is immediately out of date the moment it leaves the organization. The interaction between customers, contractors, stakeholders in the infrastructure space is fraught with delays, frustration, and poor visibility. This is due to the lack of tools and systems that collaborate effectively between customers and between each stakeholder. But by fixing external interaction issue, not only is there a huge time and cost saving, but it genuinely improves the customer experience and the relationship with your stakeholders. This is an area that needs to be improved if we're to deliver the infrastructure at the speed needed to unlock the world of tomorrow. And this is what Sitenna is helping our partners to bring to life. We help our partners to create a single source of truth leading to actionable insights across their portfolio. We deliver excellent customer experience for their clients. It helps better reporting and visibility. And it underpins growth and scale from day one to allow a lot of the technology that we're talking about, the products and services and the migration into other services, it allows it to do that at scale. And not only this, as the customer base evolves with the infrastructure providers, it unlocks value on both sides of the equation. So whenever there's an interaction around telecom infrastructure, whether it be a new build-to-suit, a new co-location, or an amendment to an existing lease, tens of thousands of dollars, euros, and pounds, and weeks, if not months, are wasted on manual, painful interactions between each stakeholder. Imagine if we could streamline this process, how much CapEx would be released. And Mark Anzi yesterday in Metro Connect, I don't know if any of you saw his speech, was talking about AI being this next wave, but the fact that there has to be digital infrastructure underpinning it. And he called for one big word, which is collaboration. The collaboration between parties to accelerate the deployment of this infrastructure so we can realize the potential of AI and its associated technologies. So I'm going to leave you with a true story and an anecdote. Whilst I was out walking my dog a few weeks ago, I bumped into one of my neighbors, Jeremy, or as he likes to be called, Jezza. Jezza's an elderly gent, not an elderly gent with a poor memory, who it turns out used to be a site acquisition lead for Orange, or as he likes to say, the original Orange in the 90s. And we got chatting about how we're both in the same industry and very much in the same space, to which he said, of course, it was different in those days. We did multiple site visits, we drew up designs, we filled in forms, and we emailed reports to each other. The process took ages, but it was great fun. Jezza was absolutely shocked when I told him that things have not evolved in one bit. So we believe it's time that the hard work of delivering networks and building the networks should evolve alongside the technologies that they underpin. Together, as we navigate this evolution from cost-centered to customer-centric organizations, we're partnering with incredible companies that are starting to reap the benefits of focusing on delivering exceptional experiences for their customers and for all of their stakeholders. They're delivering more sites, more efficiently, faster, and they're getting a higher spend of that CapEx. So as an industry, let's get the hard stuff done right. Let's get the networks built, and let's unlock the technology of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. That was very insightful, very interesting. Well, given this is the Tower and Fibre Forum, it's about time we got a TowerCo up here, really. So I'd like to hand over to Mirko from Cellnex to talk a bit about their experience, and particularly regarding their diversification. Thank you.
for the opportunity. The idea today is to present a bit Cellnex quickly and then go through, as Lee said, what are we doing and how is the diversification being approached. So, first of all, Cellnex always has been thinking to have a role in the communication and the way to communicate, to be an enabler. And today, we are serving different type of customer, key players that allow this communication. Wireless communication, so the mobile operators, content and media. You know we have a tradition in the broadcast market. And then other services that are serving and complementing our offering. Cellnex comes from 7 years of incredible expansion and growth. So we start, and we'll see in the next slide, from around 7,000 sites, and now we are over 130,000. And that means in those years we have done a lot of activity in M&A and integrated a lot of assets and people in our organization. That is also another important point in Lee points about, and also Daniel, about the culture of the company. So since the IPO in 2015, the team that has been involved, I had the honor to be part of it, invested 40 billion to get this amount of site. That today we want to make the best asset for our customers. We are present in 12 countries. Those are the assets we have in the different countries. If you look, this is in our booth. If you want to have a picture of this, you have to go to our booth. It's available there. You see we have different presence in the different country. We have done a deal involving at the same time different countries. And in some countries, we had the opportunity to do several deals. And this is why we have this spread amount of sites. Of course, this provides a very important asset for our customer, what we call anchor tenant, but to any player that wants to provide wireless communication in a country. And this is why around that, we can develop additional services, what we call diversification. By the way, on this slide, the number of sites presented is not only the one we have today, but includes also the site we are going to develop in the next years. So what we call build-to-suit program, because we have a very intense and important material activity of build-to-suit. I would say that from now to 2030, we have more than 15,000 to be built, and the last year we have been building around 4,000 to 5,000 every year. Building for us means building ourselves of having our anchor tenants building for us according to the needs the customer has. Well, from that assets, what does it mean to grow apart from diversification? Mean to add and have additional tenants. That is an important KPI for the TowerCo on the sites. And what we see today, and that was predicted some time ago, there is an increase of demand of data, even if there are some projections that say maybe this will slow down a bit. The introduction of 5G and all the new technology and application is providing these trends. So based on this demand and additionally on the projection we had in terms of requirement of the application users, new allocation of band that is driving really the development of the network, we believe there will be a relevant organic growth that has been also characterizing our result year by year. The need of new capacity or more capacity on the networks requires new sites or to modify the approach of the architecture of the network. So we have to be there. Additionally, on C-band, sometimes the regulators, let's say, suggest or force the operators to provide better coverage in rural area or any area that would have been, let's say, with lower coverage or lower capacity. So those are the drivers that we believe will bring us on the next phase, on the current phase we have. After a long period and big expansion, where we moved, as I said before, from 7,000 to 138,000 sites and communication nodes. Why I say communication node? Because as you see after, we are very active in the indoor coverage, and the communication nodes means the DAS or small cell for indoor. 40 agreements provided us the asset that you have on the right. So today, what is our strategy today is to continue to grow with organic growth, improve our operational excellence. That means get more value also for our customers. Because as it was said before by Daniel, it's very important to manage the site in the proper way, to have them well inventoried, and also to know what you have, and to be prepared for the next requirement of the market. But additional to that, and then we move to the diversification, of course, around the towers, that is our core business, we have a lot of opportunity to help and to enable services to our customers. And this is why, as I mentioned, we have this densification and indoor coverage track for growth, where we are developing, and we have been developing historically in many countries, distributed antenna system in the different typology, passive, active, whatever. And then also small cells. We'll see in short what does it mean for us. And then fiber to the tower, especially because the move to 5G and all the new demand of capacity required. As a TowerCo, the best for us is to have tower with good roof, means fiber. Not all the site will be fiberized, because you know there are area and region where the fiber is very expensive and not very economically feasible, but this is one of the targets we have. Either we fiber or our customer can fiber, but it's important to have the capacity there. As I said, on the asset that is the main, let's say the core business we have, the target towers, we would like to continue to provide and increase our organic growth, continue with the build-to-suit, and then at the same time, we have also a concept of rationalization. As I said, in some countries, we had the opportunity to buy several portfolio. And when you buy portfolio, sometimes you have also the opportunity to optimize it. There are countries where we have 3 set of portfolio or 2. When there is this kind of situation, we see also possibility to optimize, rationalize, and provide probably some additional value also to our customers. But if you go to diversification, okay. As I said, traditionally, we have been very active in the indoor coverage area because, you know, this is quite known. 90% of the time is spent in indoor. The traffic is mostly generated in indoor, and also the users are having, let's say, coverage that sometimes is not fulfilling their expectation. So based on that, we have been developing a business unit, a group of people that are devoted to develop new solutions, to work together with the customer, and our focus for sure is to have a role and more and more role in this field, because we see operator needing improved coverage, but also venue owner or entity asking for this. And so the role of neutral host can help and accelerate this implementation and this adoption. Another side, the small cells. Small cells that have been announced to be a hype several years after years, announcing 1,000 or hundreds of thousands of small cells. At least in Europe, the situation is a bit different. Today, I would say that the country with more small cells is UK still, and London. We have there around 1,300 co-location of small cells. But we see appetite and interest also in other countries coming up, in Spain, in France. Our solution in this case is not a traditional solution only. We would like to complement this service with, at a certain stage, providing coverage as service with the small cell. The densification in the city is a challenge. You have to be ready to have a proliferation or a limited control proliferation of new elements. And this, we believe, could be done by a neutral host, allowing and enabling the operator to get the capacity and the coverage they need. And this is why we have to complement the co-location probably in the future with some active play, let's say, providing, for example, the radio. But today we already provide all the colocation plus the fiber and the integration to the network. The important point today is that in many cities, macro sites are already limited or impossible. So we have to complement the traditional approach of small cell only for capacity, also probably to provide some coverage to substitute or replace macro coverage. And then I think the next one is the area that is more recent that Lee referred to, the run as a service. Okay, here we wanted to follow and look at the opportunity that was put on the table from one of today's important customer, that is Plus Polkomtel. So if you remember, at that time, we moved a bit from the traditional passive model in this specific deal, where the TowerCo acquires the asset with some people and with some infra provider, where the MNO keep all the radio access network, all the core, all the contact with the vendor, and also the people to manage and operate the network, and the related contract, specific MSA with certain characteristics for the passive. Then we move to this RAS-as-a-service model, where you see the role of the TowerCo NetCo, I don't know how to call it, or InfraCo, is moving on the value chain. And then not only the passive, but all the radio access network with the transport was transferred to us. The core network, of course, is kept by the operator because it's very relevant to keep the diversification and the services between the two operators. But also there is an integration of people in the organization that have a different knowledge and capacity than a normal TowerCo. And also the relation with your normal supplier changes because there are new suppliers. Well, of course, we were working with Nokia, Ericsson, and so on for the DAS or small cell and so on. But now we have a RAN composed by around today 8,000, 9,000 sites that they are supplied by Nokia and Ericsson. Today we provide a service to only one operator, that is Polkomtel. Our organization has integrated the people that in Polkomtel were providing these services. We did also this step because in our tradition, in our DNA, Cellnex has been working in active service or very stringent SLA services for a long time. I said broadcast, but we were operating, and we are operating in Spain, PPDR, emergency network. So managing SLA, not the SLA of a normal TowerCo, but the stringent SLA was something we had already in our mind. But in any case, when you do this step, you have to be prepared, and the capacity you add is different. The capacity you need is different. So this integration of different profile that can be moved by the original operator to you, or you can approach in a different way. The relation with vendors and specific contracts. Because the contract you have today as a TowerCo and the contract we have today as a NetCo are totally different. The approach is totally different. The responsibility is very different. Having said that, I'm moving to the end. Cellnex, keeping in mind this diversification approach that we still have, even if very focused on our core business, I would say it is always thinking on innovation. We would like to lead the innovation in all the services around the towers. We consider to be one of the few independent TowerCo or NetCo in Europe. We have an industrial model that has to improve our capability, our operational excellence, to provide the best and be more efficient, also to provide more value to our customers. And finally, we have to anticipate the need of the market, and this is why we are operating since some time in the different field I just explained. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mirko. Very interesting, and particularly your experiences and indoor and small cells in Poland. I'll be maybe asking about Poland later. Very interesting test case, that one. I'd now like to hand over to Jaime Abril from Vantage Towers to hear the perspective of what they've been doing in this area. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, first of all, to GSMA for inviting me to give a perspective about TowerCo diversification, how we see this and how we are approaching this from Vantage Towers' perspective. So first of all, very quickly, a bit about Vantage Towers. We are one of the leading tower companies in Europe. We are present in 10 markets, in 2 of them through joint ventures in the UK, Cornerstone, Italy, Inwit, and the rest of the markets directly controlling. We have more than 84,000 sites. This does not include build-to-suit commitments over the next years that we have with our customers, so this is just the current state. We are a relatively young tower company. We were born in 2020. Now in March, it will be our 3rd anniversary. And we are headquartered in Germany. We have, obviously, operations in all those markets. Basically, our main mission is to work to connect better Europe, to enable smart communities, smart cities, and Europe digital transformation, and also always fully dedicated to sustainable solutions. Everything that we try to do, energy, tower infrastructure, etc., making sure that we take into account that sustainability angle as well. So I will try to address the why and the what and the how very quickly, okay, and then I will go to some examples of what we are doing. First of all, on the why, and I thank you to Lee and Matthew for the excellent introduction, covering a bit of what is happening in the tower and mobile network operator ecosystem, all the kind of driving forces and trends. First of all, to say that our main business is hosting services and providing also energy. Our main customers are mobile network operators, but also we are hosting PPDR networks, public safety networks, utility networks, IoT providers, so a wide range of other customers. But our core comes from the mobile network operators. And therefore, everything that impacts on mobile network operators impacts directly our business as well. And a few driving forces here which are worth mentioning is the increasing competition in the TowerCo market. We have seen before that a few years back in Europe, it's a relatively recent trend, the establishment of unbundling mobile network operators from towers infrastructure. And we are already is the TowerCo business operating all the towers in Europe. Still in some countries you will have some mobile network operators still owning some towers, but the trend is growing, and this is creating a lot of competition already in the TowerCo industry. Just to say that here in Spain, as an example, there are 4 TowerCos and big TowerCos. So there is Cellnex, it's Vantage Towers, American Tower, and Totem. Okay, so we have 4 TowerCos, and if you look at the networks that we have in Spain, until now, there were like 4 operators. Now there is a merger that has been just approved between MásMóvil and Orange. There is some RAN sharing as well. And if you count the number of networks, actually physical networks, we are talking about something between 2 and 3. Okay, so you can get a sense of how competitive in some markets this is getting. The other impact is about RAN sharing. Again, cost pressures on mobile network operators are causing them to share networks to save costs. And this is also impacting on site consolidation. And we have seen some figures before on examples of how much consolidation that can happen in number of towers and rooftops when RAN sharing happens. And last but not least, we have an ever, let's say, changing requirements by our customers, first mobile network operators, and then also, as we are trying to address new customer categories, we also embrace new kind of requirements that as we want to attract those customers onto our towers, we need to cover. And these are energy-related requirements, they are connectivity-related requirements, but also, in some cases, even entering in the active equipment space. On the what, I'm just offering, let's say, a way of mapping. This is indicative, it's qualitative, there is no quantitative analysis behind, but it's a bit of our perspective on the opportunities. Most of them have been mentioned already by Lee and Matthew, and I'm just mapping them around two axes. One is the closeness to core. This is very important for us. The closest more to the right, and farther from the core more to the left, and also against the customer demand, at least the one that we see. This is an aggregated, let's say, qualitative picture across our markets. This is heavily dependent market by market. This is very important to mention, as some will maybe think twice, okay, why a certain bubble is there and not over there, okay? So understand this is an aggregated picture, but it's a way to show how we could prioritize on what would be the kind of new products and services that we would explore and try to address and go about them. And actually, we are already addressing some of those areas. And first of all, and I just put there, even if it's not strictly speaking diversification, but very important, our main customers today want more economic build-to-suit and co-location solutions, especially to address rural deployments. And also network densification. So they are constantly asking for that, and we are working with them to try to find solutions that are more economic efficient. Energy, it's another pain point of mobile network operators. They want to reduce cost, and we are also working on energy efficiency initiatives, as well as, for example, renewable on-site power backup, etc., not only for MNOs, but also for some other kind of customers like utilities and public safety networks. Outdoor small cells is another one that is happening. We just recently announced that we are participating in the small cell network deployment of Telefónica in Spain, and we're helping them to roll out small cells in Spain. Still, small cells, we see it a bit of a not happening massively now. We have the expectation that will happen, but it's true that small cells were announced to be massively taking off already for years, right? And it's not, it hasn't happened. Now we start seeing some traction and some needs of network densification through small cells. In terms of fiber, again, heavily dependent on the market. Some markets like Spain, there is already quite a high penetration of fiber to our sites. For us, having, like for my colleague Mirko, having fiber to the site, it's a fundamental asset. And either we, let's say, it's the mobile network operators that, or FibreCos that are bringing fiber, and we are facilitating that task, or if needed, we would look at co-investment opportunities as well. And within the perimeter of our location, certainly that part, it would be covered by us. There are other areas that we are also exploring and touching, but they are going farther from the core. The one run as a service might become really a big opportunity. By the way, the size of the bubble represents how big the opportunity is. Again, qualitative. Purple color, it's MNO, mobile network operator kind of demand, while the white one, it's more other kind of customers, okay? And just wanted to very quickly to touch on in-building solutions, because there we really see a demand, not only by mobile network operators that continue deploying, want to deploy mobile indoor building solutions for big and large venues like this one, for example, to provide capacity and coverage. But there is a range of locations like hotels, retail, commercial buildings that eventually mobile network operators wouldn't have the budget to invest on those, and is where we see an opportunity to invest and recover that through the location owner, working together, of course, with mobile network operators. On the how, this is a complex matter when you talk about diversification. I just here bring up the key factors, okay, that we are considering when we are considering diversifying and eventually developing a new product and service. We have, obviously, the customer's most important, these ever-changing requirements. Cost is, especially for our mobile network operators, it's key. So that we really take very seriously, and as well as time to market. Our investors also a very important piece when it comes to diversification. The TowerCo business the traditional TowerCo business is a very solid and predictable business. When we introduce diversification, we want to make sure that we are not causing a material impact, at least negative, on certain key financials like margins, like returns, and that we always deliver long-term value. This is very important. It's not something one-off happening in the next 2-3 years, but it has to deliver long-term value. Government and regulation, we want to diversify. We are talking about energy or even active services like run as a service. Obviously, we are entering in other spaces that are regulated, and in some cases heavily regulated, so we want to be careful that we take into consideration all these regulations. When we talk about also public funding that is happening at this moment for rural coverage, corridors, etc., also very important to take into account that with this public funding, there are strong obligations that come, strong control that needs to be also taken into account. And last but not least, very important, landlords are key assets of any TowerCo, so we have to go together with them and also share, let's say, the growth and the benefit with them, and so that they are happy and we get quality and enough quantity. And for example, for small cells, this is an area that it's critical, okay, to get enough locations, as the number of small cells that are predicted to be happening, okay, in the next years, it's an order of magnitude at least higher than the existing macro site portfolio. So, having touched on this, I'm going to just quickly go through some examples. So first of all, this is an area that it's already been addressed, and we are continuously having projects of in-building coverage. Our model is a coverage as a service. We are, let's say, working on one hand with mobile network operators for big public spaces, but as well with location owners. And depending on the case, depending on the market, sometimes it's the mobile network operator paying for that DAS system, and sometimes it's the location owner. We've got more than 1,300 DAS locations across Europe, airports, underground facilities, tunnels, etc. And we are continuously working on expanding indoor coverage. We see this as an area where there is a high demand. It's not always easy, okay, to find the right commercial model in a particular market or in a particular, let's say, venue or vertical. But slowly, the TowerCo is getting more present in this space. The other area, small cells, as I just discussed, talked before with Telefónica. We have started this project, and we see a small cells infrastructure, urban infrastructure, not only relevant for mobile network operators, but also for the cities, for the smart city projects, installing to host sensors. And this is the angle that we are taking as a TowerCo. We are basically offering shared infrastructure. And here we have the opportunity to bring another customer or customers, which would be cities and companies that work with cities to enable smart cities. Okay, so, and by the way, not only sensors and gateways, but or Wi-Fi hotspots or whatever the city would like. EV charging is another area that fits perfectly with deployment of urban infrastructure. Another area, that's because it's, again, we have a continuous demand by mobile network operators to support its own energy. And here we offer the basic package, which is already part of our core business about power connection, battery backup, etc. But now we are also working with mobile network operators and with other customers to provide, for example, additional backup, hybrid solutions, and also removal on site. We have projects of solar panels in the Czech Republic, for example, and wind turbines, for example, in Germany. So we are also working to address these new requirements and helping mobile network operators, our customers, to get more cost efficient and also green as well. And another one that we are looking at, and it has been mentioned before, and this is probably farther from the core, but I wanted to bring this just for you to understand that we are addressing, let's say, the one that we see most demand and closest to the core, but at the same time, we are looking at other areas that we see that there is a demand as well, and installing sensors on our towers, and here we are focusing on weather, air quality, but also using existing microwave backhauling infrastructure to act as, for example, rainfall sensor. And we have also announced a partnership, and we are with a company that basically is taking that microwave information and converting it into precipitation data. So you don't need to install anything, is there, while complementing with some weather station and also air quality sensors. I'm providing that as data as a service, okay? On top of that, you could provide also other forecasting services, nowcasting services as well. We have seen this also happening in other areas of the globe, and we are exploring at this moment. We are running this pilot here in Spain, and yeah, it's a bit of a speculative, but there is a big market already for this environmental data. And with this, I conclude my presentation, and I will be happy to respond to any questions later.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was fascinating to hear all the things that Vantage are getting up to in this area. Really, really valuable. As the last speaker, I'd like to invite Raj to come up from YOFC. Of course, this is the Tower Fibre Forum, so I want to hear a little bit on the fibre side. Thank you.
So, okay, I'm the only fiber guy here. So I hope to introduce the next generation fiber application for advanced 5G and 6G networks. In fact, presently, about 99% of data goes through solid core fiber. And it's expected that in the future, 99% of the data will go through air. Like wireless, of course, but also special design fiber where the data will go through air in the fiber. So that will be like a very special situation. Okay. I think the vision, you all already know about this, that all information will be available through various devices at a very high speed. So management of everything will be effective and efficient through fully connected world. So I think this is a very common thing with driving the fiber guys to design new kind of fibers. So advanced 5G and 6G will require more base stations and more fibers for very high-speed data transmission. So, and especially in the very special environment, for example, we need bend-insensitive fiber for in the RAN networks. And also the ultra-low latency fibers, low-loss fibers will be important to reduce the cost of the network. So here is an example for bend-insensitive fiber. Like in a noodle-type wiring, so you need a bend-insensitive fiber, which is not very easy to install, of course, in this kind of complex network systems. Other aspect is low latency. So low latency will increase the wireless gain. So hollow core fiber, as I just said, that hollow core data through air, which is faster than a solid core, where the latency can be reduced towards 3.3 microsecond per kilometer, while in the solid core it's like about 5 microsecond per kilometer. So this kind of fiber will be very efficient for automated safe driving and intelligent communication. So as I mentioned just now, attenuation is also very important, because the attenuation can reduce the costs greatly. So especially due to longer repeater distance, electrical power savings, reduction in components cost, and increasing the lifespan of devices. So allowing more channels per fiber to low nonlinearity, especially in combination with large effective area fibers. I think this slide is like, at this moment I can get 1G speed in my house, but with mobile speed still very low. So I hope we can get the speed same level as the wired in the future. So for this, we do require that the special fiber can support this kind of higher speed transmission. Another aspect is, again, the demand of fiber. You see in the last 30, 40 years, there was a high demand during different technology introduction. We all know the dot-com boom in the early 2000s. Then we had a huge demand during the 3G era, and the stronger demand was during the 4G era. The 5G was not that much at present, so we hope that the advanced 5G, 5.5G and the 6G, and of course the AIGC will drive the demand to the next level, which will be good for our business. So the next generation fibers. I think we have all kind of fiber, very diversified for all kind of different environment, different networks, for long haul, in 5G like the backhaul. So there's all kind of fibers really available also for short distances, and fibers which with low component cost like the multi-mode fiber. So all fibers is available to support the next generation networks. So one of the advantage for the G654E fibers, which can be deployed in the 5G backhaul. So key advantage, of course, is due to large effective area, low linearities. We can space more channels in the fiber, so the capacity will increase. Also, the ultra low loss levels can help to reduce the network cost in this situation. So this fiber is being used in various trunk line networks from China Telecom, China Mobile, China Unicom, State Grid, Converge Philippines, and Telecom Brazil. So this fiber already is being supplied by us over 3 million kilometers, and the demand is growing for this fiber. So another type fiber is like SDM, space division multiplexing, which has this one fiber can go through different cores. That means that in a smaller cable you can put a lot of signals through. Another is like the few mode fiber. So you have in one single core a lot of modes which can transfer a lot of signal through the fiber and towards the tower in this case also. So as you can see, a lot of cores in a single fiber, similar size fiber, so you can allow a lot of signals through. Other is like we call it the preform size. We move from smaller 80 to 150, which can reduce the cost to enable higher efficiency for the customers. So the multi-core fiber trials in China, we have like a cooperation with various companies to test it out. So we had like tested a 17.6 kilometer. So we provided all the solutions like the fiber cable, the fan in, fan out, the device to couple the light through, splicing devices. So the attenuation level at this moment is like 0.21, and then in the 4-core fiber, 0.2 about, in a 7-core fiber. So splicing was done with different splicers. So I think the level still need to be improved, but we are very close to get the same level as the standard fibers. So R&D stage for multi-core fiber LC connectors. Presently, typical loss level is like 0.1 to 0.2 dB. But in the future, we can get this to much lower levels. Also, the return loss is minus 55 to minus 60 dB. MCF MPO typical insertion loss is 0.8. So return loss is like minus 50 dB. And for APC type, the insertion loss is less than minus 60 dB. So another 4-core FIFO devices still in R&D stage, but samples, small batches are available with insertion loss about 1 dB, 0.8 dB, 0.5 dB, and crosstalks less than minus 45 dB. So bulk deliveries will be soon available. So we think this fiber will be the future to solve a lot of network constraints. Just now what I mentioned that the hollow core fiber, that 99% fiber will travel through this kind of fibers. So now we are, for this fiber, the attenuation level is already very low. And this will be like the super fiber of the future with very low latency, like in 31% lower loss. Future will be like less than 0.1 dB per kilometer. And as you know, 0.01 dB already reduced the network costs with 6 to 12% about. Also wider band, low non-linearity, red hot, lower dispersion, insensitivity to environment temperature. So there's a lot of advantage. So we hope that this fiber will succeed in the future. This is like our target at this moment. We have our attenuation level still relatively high, but our target is to achieve the 0.2 dB level very soon. So as I try to explain that we have all kind of fiber available for the 5G and 6G network construction. So typically for this kind of projects, we need to cooperate with a customer to have like a customized design of fibers. Okay, thank you for your attention for this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Raj, for that. I'd like now to invite all our panelists up onto the stage. We'll start the discussion. Daniel, I'll grab that seat there. I'll grab that one. I'll probably start asking a couple of questions, but then I'd really enjoy and really appreciate any questions you have from yourselves. So please do be thinking through those, and we'll I'll be opening the questions up to the floor in just a moment. Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much. There were some very interesting presentations. There's some very interesting insights on what is possible out there. First of all, for the TowerCos, what you guys are doing already, and where this might all go, and the fiber aspects as well were very much appreciated as well. My first question is around organizational challenges. We've seen all sorts of, and Matt, you described them well, all sorts of opportunities out there for TowerCos. Now, some of them are perhaps close to the competencies that TowerCos traditionally have, something like power as a service or fiber backhaul. Others are quite a long way away. RAN as a service, edge compute, those sorts of things. So, how do TowerCos have to change Do they need to have a new model, new skills, new partners? How are you guys approaching that, and what sort of challenges does that create? I don't know if anybody wants to take that first of all. Perhaps Mirko, any thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, as I was saying during the presentation, any steps you do probably require to get some knowledge if you don't have it to approach the new challenges. So in the case, for example, of the run as a service, as I mentioned, the step you should do if you are a passive, or let's say a traditional TowerCo, is to get the capacity and the capability to provide the services that normally the operator is doing by managing its own network. That is clearly one important step to be considered, and is happening in probably any other area where you don't have traditionally the capability. You can, of course, have different model, a lean model where you have the most important knowledge internalized and rely on third party to develop the services. This is one model. Another is also to create internally all the capacity. Yep. This depends also on the different situation, different TowerCo, and the country, I believe.
Okay, Daniel, any thoughts there? Because you're one of the potential partners for the TowerCos.
Yeah, so not to oversell what we do, but I suppose what we're seeing in a number of parties is, it's the classic build by partner. If you've got these opportunities out there, what is the way you're going to go and capture those? And we're kind of, some of the conversations we're going to start having is kind of the philosophical debate of where and how deep TowerCos want to go into peripheral markets and the pros and cons around them. But I think organizationally, it's about understanding what is core and then what do we want to build on, and do we want to build it by building internally, partnering with someone, or buying assets and pulling them into the house. I think the core aspect, and I think what we all would agree on is not to lose sight on, is TowerCos fundamentally have one major customer now, and that's the carrier. So first and foremost is to support the carrier in their core delivery, and then to look at a different peripheral services to then layer those on. And I think culturally and organizationally is to assess, does it make sense or not to go into these peripheral organizations, because it can start to really eat into your margins, and investors can start to ask questions, I think, at that stage.
Always important consideration, that one.
Yes.
I don't know, Jaime, you discussed a few of those challenges and processes you've got to go through as you start to go to more exotic, or unusual services. What are the big challenges there?
I think it's a very good question. When we talk about diversification and considering all those factors, let's say we would start, let's say, trialing. Okay, so testing first, and trialing before really getting into a more organization ready to commercially scale. We want to test really with customers that what they have, the problem that they have, we are covering them, the needs that there is in the market, they are well covered, and there is a business behind. For that, what we do, especially at the initial stage, but I would say also looking long term, for us, partnerships with companies that are competent and experts in this space, we provide a platform to collaborate with them where they can we work together and go into a kind of a strategic partnership. There could be different commercial models. Sometimes it's more the typical supply model. In some of the cases, depending on the service, we could consider other models like revenue share, for example, right? So rather than going and trying to create a big organization right from the start and getting the competences, or even considering acquiring, we test, and then for now, when I look at the areas that we are addressing commercially today, we rely very much on partners. Okay, we have still an internal core of people with expertise in these areas, but it's not all internal organization. It's very much relying on partners.
Interesting. And Matt, from you look at this from an external perspective. You have the helicopter view of the whole thing that the TowerCos are doing. Where do you see them prioritizing? Where should they prioritize, and what are the challenges, do you think?
I think what you see with TowerCos is where they're doing it well, they're following their customers, and it's being very much led by those customers in terms of what those opportunities are. So for Cellnex going into Poland, there's an opportunity to do that because a mobile operator was seeking someone to run their radio access network for them. But that feeds into the other aspect of prioritization in terms of building internal capabilities. So TowerCos are traditionally quite lean organizations.
Yes.
Lots of stuff is outsourced. If you are going to diversify into some of these other aspects, you need to build up quite substantial new teams within internally and new sets of expertise. So I think there's those two tendencies that are helping TowerCos work out what they are focusing on next.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got to, you mentioned Poland there, and I've got to come to Poland because of all the things we're talking about, in some ways that is the big ticket item. There's a huge potential opportunity there. If a TowerCo has control of a good number of towers in a market and also perhaps provides RAN services for multiple MNOs, that creates the opportunity for efficiency benefits and creating create value for shareholders. Do you see that as a test case within Cellnex, and perhaps to others as well? Can you see it happening elsewhere, and to others on the panel as well? Can we see other TowerCos going down that route as well?
Okay, speaking for Cellnex, this is clearly for us a test case, because there is no, at the moment, any situation where a neutral lossy providing service to no controlled MNO, or no, we are not captive each other there. And additionally, our test case would be to have 2 MNO on it.
Yes.
To make it working really, because
it's currently one. It's currently
now we have only Polkomtel, but of course, Poland is a market where there is already situation where there are 4 operators, 2 of them, T-Mobile and Orange, they have already in place a JV where they do complete RAN sharing all over the country. So the other 2 are the 2 candidates, so Polkomtel and Play, to maybe do the same move, and this would be probably our next step if it could be possible. And then the test means, is this model working as we believe? What are the results? And as you said, we have tower and, in this case, RAN. So it's probably the way to get the most synergy and efficiency. This is what we see in the market is really an interest from the operators.
Interesting.
We also see this something that maybe could be an interest from the regulator point of view to avoid maybe merge, to generate some efficiency without merging. But JV on RAN sharing among operators are quite common in Europe. So we see interest, appetite, but people also sit and waiting. What does it mean?
It's a big step, and there's plenty of eyes across Europe and the world watching to see which direction it takes. And any other thoughts on that? From Vantage, is there any? Do you think there's any scope of Vantage going in that direction, or?
We will certainly again follow customer, problem and need. We will consider that. It's a step really quite
it's a big
away from the core. But at this moment, although there are some discussions and thoughts around this, for now we don't see that happening very much in the markets that we cover soon. Okay, that doesn't mean that eventually, there could be a moment where there is a very, very specific request, okay, to supply those services, and we would consider that. Again, we would need to put everything in the whole equation of all the factors to see whether it's a business opportunity that would deliver value to both the customer and Vantage.
Okay, thank you. One more topic I'd like to just talk about before we open the questions to the floor is small cells. Now, small cell adoption has been quite muted in Europe, and compared to certainly Japan, South Korea, and the US. So it was interesting today to hear both you guys from Mirko and Jaime talk about perhaps we're getting a bit of traction now in Europe. So My questions are, I might bring Daniel first in here. You know, you've got a lot of experience in the US. Why did we see more small cells in the US than in Europe? And then I might open the question more widely as to, might we see more small cells in the future?
Yeah, so I think there's various challenges that have happened we've seen in Europe, and I think they're starting to find their way into unlocking that demand. I think just from a US perspective, there's been a couple of factors to it. One is about spectrum availability and the fragmentation of spectrum, so mid-band availability spectrum, but also kind of national coverage. We know that spectrum in the US is a lot more fragmented than in sort of European markets. The second is about the policy and the ability to deploy. So the FCC deployed a 5G fast program, which was incentivizing for municipalities to allow for these sorts of deployments to come onto their assets. That certainly drove a wave of small cells. And then I think the third is the economics, is that you're looking at Crown Castle are deploying multi-tenant small cells, and they have the fibre. We can get onto whether or not it was a good investment, better not to have the fibre in-house. They have the fibre, their ability to deploy multi-tenants, the economics worked. In Europe, you're seeing a different change to that, and I think some of the conversations we've already heard is, rooftop deployment in urban areas in Europe is kind of at its maximum. It's very hard to deploy new rooftops. It's very hard to get coverage down to the street level. Naturally, the drive to small cells will come, and we think is coming, and we're certainly seeing the demand from our side in Europe. The model will be the interesting part. Is it an operator going on their own? Is it a TowerCo going and doing individual small cells for an operator? Is it neutral hosts deploying capacity as a service and allowing capacity? And we're seeing, Open RAN, etc. It's a big melting pot now for small cells. I think the demand, and not only hope, because our business model is based on more points the better. I actually do believe that the small cell demand is coming. But from the US perspective, it was an easier deployment, slightly better economics at the time. I think that we're going to start seeing that in Europe.
And what about elsewhere? I mean, Matt, do you think, where's small cells at? Where's it coming?
So I was going to say, there's been a big geographic difference in sort of small cell deployments in certain areas, and I think some of it comes down to sort of the control and availability in an urban space. So if you're looking at a lot of the developments in the Middle East, you have whole new developments with a single sort of owner able to help coordinate where the small cells go in. Similarly, in Asia, you've got a lot of large malls. You have there's an urban structure there where it's easier to get control over a large area to put in the small cells you need. In Europe, we have much older cityscapes. We have municipalities in charge of them that are a bit more disjointed. I mean, certainly within London, we've got lots of different boroughs, and we've got the mayor, but we don't have someone with a single control to say, yeah, you've got permission to go and put small cells where you need to. So there is a kind of a sort of market structure thing that holds back in certain areas where you need to have certainty of what you can deploy and who you need to get permission from.
Okay.
And that's easier in certain areas than others. With a macro tower, you need to get a permit and you can put it up. With a small cell, it's slightly harder.
Okay. Thank you very much. At this point, I think I'd probably like to open questions to the floor. Is there anybody that has any questions? We have one over there. First of all, I think we've got a microphone on its way to you.
Hello. Yeah. Thomas Sweeteller from Datacon. I've got a follow-up question on the outdoor small cells as well. Do you guys see that there would be any barriers from the operators actually going into something like a MORAN or active sharing type of agreement on the small cells?
Okay. So just to clarify the question there, it's do you see the MNOs wanting to go into a MORAN, a kind of a MOCN shared solution rather than each deploying their own small cells?
Correct.
Okay. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. Whether what's the model? Are we seeing shared the MNOs going into small cells and sharing them? Are we seeing a neutral host? Are we seeing them all going and putting their own individual small cells in?
So maybe just to start, what we see, clearly the small cell needs a sustainable model, and of course proliferation of a lot of small cell from different peripheral probably is not what we will see, especially because the municipality or the municipality are not prepared for that, and they will be against that. So there are also products that could be multi-operators, But RAN sharing, of course, is the easy one to be implemented. Then you have to really have the right agreement, the possibility to also to share, depending on which are the vendor on the two parts. But yeah, this we haven't seen yet, but I don't think it will be impossible. It will be probably possible.
Anybody else want to bring it, Adam?
Yeah, I don't know if I understood well barriers. I mean, from the TowerCo perspective, it wouldn't be barriers. In principle, we would follow whatever is the MNO kind of need and best way to resolve this together. First of all, I mean, there could be also regulation depending on the market considerations when it comes to sharing networks, for example, in dense urban areas. But that said, I mean, you can go from MORAN to simple antenna sharing. So there are many sharing models where you can avoid this proliferation and having multi-tenancy in one way or another. And then, as I said before, I see as well the cities and companies that are also enabling us smart cities as a customer, or EV charging companies, for example, as a customer also of this infrastructure, right? And I think it's if we manage to, to bring all those customers together, is where this shared infrastructure for a TowerCo, it makes sense. So we are having already at macro site level RAN sharing, active sharing, and in some cases even MOCAN. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. Any more questions? We have one at the front here. Thanks, Pete.
Hi, I'm Josh Lee with Maritech. So Jaime, you showed a slide that showed that edge data server was low customer demand. And Daniel, you mentioned that this, build it and they will come mentality no longer holds. But we've heard that AI is going to grow very fast, a lot of need for digital infrastructure. So is it better for telcos to try to offer the service directly to governments and enterprises, or is it better to just kind of offer it through the telco to offer it to the end customers?
Interesting question, that. Matt, I know it's something you talked to. Is that something you could, there's a big forecast growth out there for data centers.
There's big forecast growth, but I think
AI
is that currently there is not. I don't think TowerCos are seeing a lot of demand coming to them for edge compute, or people saying like, "I really love the locations you have. I want to put edge data centers in your compounds." That isn't currently happening, and I think it's an interesting point because I think over the last year AI has become very real, and that is going to increase demand for compute, and you're going to want lots of that at the edge. But I think until TowerCos actually get people knocking on their doors, which I think is maybe starting to happen, but I haven't heard too much about it yet.
So one of my colleagues' favourite questions whenever he goes to speak to any telcos is, so edge. How many edge data centers do you need? And the differences in the answers he gets is phenomenal. From, we'll need dozens, hundreds, to I think he asked the question in South Korea and was told one. So what is the edge? How far does it go? And then you really have to believe the edge goes out a long way to be putting edge data centers on sites. But I don't know if anybody else has any.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the things we're seeing in the US, sort of the trickle through the starting point of hyperscalers playing in that space and saying, coming to TowerCos and saying, you've got good locations, usually in urban areas, and you've got space for other things. Can we come and put some equipment in there that effectively is edge computing? I think it's going to be interesting to see how TowerCos try to play in that space, because the scale, capacity, and spend of the hyperscalers means that the leverage sits with them, not with the tower companies, and accessing a location close to a tower is probably not the hard part. The hard part is the services and actually deploying it. So I think there's a role for TowerCos to play and to sort of adapt in this space, but the trade-off isn't necessarily with the municipalities and with government and with private entities. It's with hyperscalers and with the TowerCos, and how do they play together? Yeah. It's very difficult when your capex budget is the equivalent to the entire telco market every year. So it's an interesting challenge.
This year and over a number of years, there's obviously been that big, I don't want to use the word confrontation, but rivalry between the big techs and the telcos, and this does look like the front line of the future. And there is a question whether the telcos, whether it's the TowerCos or the MNOs, take that opportunity if the opportunity is there, or whether it will be the Amazons, Metas of this world. I mean, any other thoughts on that? Or?
Clearly, the capillarity of edge, if really edge as it was foreseen is needed, can be provided by TowerCos.
Yes.
But the problem is that today, as you said, it's not clear how many edge points you need, because there are no application clear. Maybe AI will trigger something, but it's usually a question of why we should deploy edge, I mean the operator, if there is no clear need for it, latency and so on. This is the point. But to be ready for that, it's clear that our car there.
Yeah, perfect. Any more questions from the? Yes, we have one there. Thanks, Pete.
So hi, Shen Chen from Sitenna. So I have a question concerning the diversification process for TowerCos. So as part of this process, the strategy includes taking over and getting into some active infrastructure business. And as part of it, obviously meaning taking over some activities from MNOs. And do you see any reasons for which MNOs in the future can be reluctant to giving you more and more part of this market? Because after all, I understand that there's obviously cost issues, so they can save on cost, but there's also a lot of uncertainties and lack of control in the future, which can arise from this issue as well, and this trend. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. So I guess when we're talking about RAN services, there's the big example, which is Poland and operating the whole RAN, but then there is the, offering a neutral host, or within the smaller versions of RAN as a service. Now, how are the discussions going with the MNOs from that point of view? How much do they see you as a complementing, helping partner? How much do they see you as eating their lunch? I don't know. I mean, Jaime, how do you see that?
Yeah, I think these RAN services, it's quite a wide range. Okay, you can start with some services like installation, field maintenance. We are already doing field maintenance of our towers. We are sharing many of the let's say, parties that are doing that. Is not just passive infrastructure, but also active equipment. So it makes sense that there are some synergy elements there. It's true that there is a bit of a, let's say, if you want, balancing between control and cost efficiency, right? So in the end, it's a bit of a decision case by MNO, depending also even on the market, right? I think perhaps it could go faster, but it's happening slowly, okay. And for example, in building solutions already, I mean, we are deploying, designing, deploying, operating, maintaining, and monitoring DAS systems that contain also active elements, I mean, antennas, master units, fiber, etc. So this is a sort of a, going beyond even the installation, also owning some hardware that traditionally has been, let's say, the property under the control of mobile network operators. So I think it's a process, okay? So it's a process. Yes, obviously a customer doesn't want to lose control of a key asset, which is the network, but at the same time there are cost pressures there, and as they learn that we can do this for them, and there is a good business case, then yeah, normally that happens naturally.
Anybody else want to come in on that point?
Just to make a point about that, I think the challenge is going to be, where does that SG&A cost sit? And we saw from one of your presentations that the multiple heads and the resources, and where does it sit on the delivery side. I think there's an opportunity, selfishly speaking, there's an opportunity as we emerge and change that, of putting technology in to remove a lot of those resource constraints and challenges, and that's what we're trying to do in terms of Sitenna, to collapse the process down. And I think we're starting to see that. It comes back to that philosophical question about control and about cost. Who should own the cost? Who should own the margin? And I think there's a little bit of a jealousy from the operator side looking at TowerCo margins, that they're quite healthy, and saying, well, actually, hang on a second, you should take more of my cost. But that also alleviates some of the challenges around the control. That's been the same for Spectrum. It's been the same for towers. Should towers sit in or out of the business? My personal view is I think we're going to see a blended approach. We're going to see versions of RAN share, versions of network share, as we've seen with net shares before. And it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all, and I think both the TowerCos today have said they'll follow their customers, and they'll adapt to their customer needs. The big question will be, how far do the investor base allow TowerCos to move into the space, because it diminishes their margins, right? Large margin games in TowerCos are healthy. Not all TowerCos want to be adopting new models because their customers say so. Some investors will just say, we want to be steel, go away.
I think we have time for one more question here. I think we have one at the front here. I'm afraid this will probably need to be our last one. Okay.
Hi, here is Alessandro Puglia from Campion Invent. I would like to understand, one of the leitmotiv of Mobile Congress this year was generative AI. And I would like to understand also your perspective on how generative AI in TowerCo ecosystem can support the productization, the prototyping of new product and service and scale, understand the customer, and also optimize your operational excellence, your operations.
Okay, so we couldn't get through this session without discussing generative AI. We left it to the last 30 seconds. I like it. Okay, so AI in the TowerCo space. It isn't all steel, apparently. How can you see it both, I guess, in, first of all, the development of new product, new services, perhaps even the management of them going forward? Anybody who want to bring in on that?
No, maybe just in the operation of the network, passive, active, whatever, the AI will play clearly a role. And we are already, maybe we are at the early stages, not generative is whatever it is now, but we are already applying. Proactive maintenance, to detect in advance, all this is clearly part of our business day by day.
So maybe go to Jaime, because I mean, you're in this space. I mean, do we need to walk before we run and get the AI out? Do we need to get the basics in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Generative AI, I don't know if anyone is as much of a tech nerd as I am watching Y Combinator videos, but there was a good discussion about where generative AI is really powerful, and it is really powerful in boring, repeatable processes. Unfortunately, in TowerCos, there's a lot of boring, repeatable processes, hence why my business exists. But I think there's huge opportunity in unlocking those processes. As we said, you know, there's 15,000 BTS sites coming online over the next few years from yourselves. Saving 10 or 15,000 pounds per tower reduces the amount of money you need to spend for that site, and you can go and deploy additional towers for it. Generative AI will drive and support cost reduction in the process, and that's why where we see a 20 to 30% reduction in the cost of delivering sites, and through the collaboration, generative AI, and we've already started to build generative AI into the platform, but not to scare the TowerCos, because we know it's a walk before you run. It's coming because of the number of processes throughout the value chain, and I think that will help to alleviate and unlock new products. You know, if you go into edge computer power, whatever it might be, again, the challenges largely are around the people and the processes to deliver them, and if they can be delivered more efficiently, investors might be more willing to go into that space because the margins might be better, because you've reduced just that paperwork, that pain, that process, and the people need. So that's where I think generative AI is going to be very, very powerful in this space.
Perfect, thank you. I'm afraid we are out of time. I realize there's people who want more questions. Please do come up and ask the panelists, but I'm afraid we are out of time. So the last thing for me to do is to thank the panelists. I thought there was some excellent discussions and talks.
Thank you.
And thank you guys, the audience, as well, for the interesting questions. I hope you have a very, very good last half day of the conference, and I hope to see you next year.